Alexander asks, and we need our users to print from PDF for whatever their app is, and then save that file down to their local computers while keeping their AVD environment locked down and secure. Is this even possible? Thanks for your question, Alexander, and if you have a question, please comment down below and let me know. And the good news here is you have a lot of options. And there's even a new secret weapon to help you with exactly this problem, which I'll tell you about later in the video. Here in the AVD portal, go to your host pools and then check out your RDP properties, then go to device redirection. And these are what I like to call the all or nothing options. You could use USB redirection, which will let you plug in any kind of thumb drive or external hard drive, and that'll project it into their remote sessions. And then we have drive redirection, which is basically the same principle, but it works for all of your disks that are already on your local computer. And then there's clipboard redirection, which may or may not be helpful, but you could certainly use it to copy files or information in or out of your environment. And as of this recording, this is just a on or off feature, and it is only bidirectional today. Now, these aren't the best options, but they are the simplest and you can do it right now. But generally, I don't recommend it if you have another option. And that's because these all or nothing solutions don't give you a lot of control. But all of the other things I'm going to talk about in this video will be useful to you depending on what environment you have. Now, there are three basic join types in AVD: Azure AD joined, hybrid joined, and traditional domain joined. If you're on the traditional or hybrid side of things, you can set up a file server and then set up some shares and map those as drives onto your AVD cloud PCs, and your users can just drop their files right there and then pick them up on their laptops. Or you could go with a cloud-based file server and use Azure Files or Azure NetApp files with Active Directory authentication. Then just map the drives like you would have before, and you're good to go. And if you do end up with a lot of shares, you can even put a DFS namespace in front of it all. Then your users can go to a central location like msazureacademy.com, corp shares, and see all of their folders. And behind them, I could have any one of 100 different Azure file shares or NetApp files all combined together. And depending on your use case, you could go a step further than that and set up Azure Files Sync. That sets up all your files in the cloud, just like we talked about, and then has hot file caches set up near your VMs or on-prem or wherever you need them so that everyone can access their data really fast. But that's a whole nother video, and comment below if you're interested. Another way to go on the hybrid side is Azure Files with Azure AD Kerberos authentication. You get the same kind of file share, but this is leaning more towards a full cloud solution. But you still need a domain controller in your environment to make this work today, and your users do need to be synced. But this is a great solution for AVD or Windows 365 hosts that are cloud joined, as long as you have line of sight to your domain controller. So what do you do if you're just cloud joined with no domain controllers anywhere in sight? You can't use a centralized file server. So what can you do? Well, how about a cloud-based file service? Now, unless you've been living under a rock on a desert island with you've heard of OneDrive, Dropbox, Google Drive, and they all basically do the same kind of thing. They let you store your files online and then access them from anywhere that you have an internet connection. And they also have a syncing agent that will replicate your files from the cloud onto all of your different devices. Now, the real advantage here for OneDrive is it's already part of your operating system and your AVD hosts, and you already probably have a license for OneDrive for Business, which is built right on top of SharePoint Online, but it's even easier to manage. Now, for some reason, if your AVD hosts don't have OneDrive installed, or you're missing the AVD group policies, just go ahead and search for OneDrive, download it, and then kick off the install. Once it's complete, you want to go to %localappdata%/Microsoft/OneDrive. And you'll see a folder here that has a big old string of numbers. Go in there, and then you'll find an ADM folder, and here's all of the OneDrive group policies. Just copy the ADMX and ADML files over to your policy definitions folder on your domain controllers and reopen your group policy management console, and you're ready to go. On the Intune side, this is already all baked in. You just go to your devices and then configuration policies on the left, create a new policy. Your platform should be Windows 10 or newer. The profile type should be templates, and then select your admin template. Give it a name and a good description. Click next, and then you want to scroll down till you find the OneDrive folder. And no matter if you're on the GPO side of things or the Intune side, these are the same policies that I recommend in an AVD environment. Starting with allow syncing OneDrive accounts from only specific organizations. This way you isolate OneDrive to your company only. And that'll need a tenant ID, which you can find here in the Azure AD overview. Just click right there to copy it and then paste it back in your policy. Next, use block file downloads when users are low on disk space. Now I prefer to set this value to 27648, which is 27 gigabytes. Scroll down and select automatic upload bandwidth management, and that'll let OneDrive take care of managing itself based on the VM performance. Then we have prevent the sync app from generating network traffic until users sign in, which is kind of self-explanatory. You don't want your users generating any load on the system until they get a proper sign-in completed. Scroll down a little bit more and set the max size for a user's OneDrive that can download automatically. This is a good safety feature. If you don't do some of the other policies, you won't fill up your C drives. So for that, paste in your tenant ID again, and then I like to set the value for 1 gig. Now here at the bottom, you have silently move Windows known folders to OneDrive, but don't use that. That is a terrible idea. Instead, you want to click that tiny little number 2 and go to the second page. Here's version 2 of known folder policies, and that's the one you want. Paste in your tenant ID again, and then you can choose from the 3 folders that you want this to be enabled on. And I like to use all 3. Then you should also use silently sign in users in the OneDrive Sync app. And this is that single sign-on experience that we all know and love. Now, if you're also in a hybrid environment, you can optionally specify your OneDrive location and choose between SharePoint Online or a traditional SharePoint server. And you should also use files on demand. Now, files in OneDrive have 3 different states. Online only, which is how everything starts, taking up no space at all on your cloud PCs. Then when you open a file, it downloads on this device so that you can access it as fast as possible. And the download here is also going to be very fast because your cloud PCs are sitting right next to the OneDrive service. So even accessing very large files happens very fast. Now, the way it normally works in Windows is OneDrive will figure out when a file goes cold on the system and it's no longer needed, and then something called Storage Sense will clean up those files, and OneDrive changes their state back to cloud only. And this works great in your AVD personal hosts or Windows 365 cloud PCs. But in multi-session hosts, Storage Sense is not supported and should be disabled. So what can you do for multi-session? Well, keep watching and I'll tell you about that secret I mentioned in the beginning that'll solve this problem for you in just a minute. And the last state here is always available. Now, to make this work, you have to right-click on the file and purposely choose to have the file always on this device. And that's going to be unique from device to device. And the last policy I suggest is warn users whose disk space is low. And you'll want to set this for something higher than the block file downloads policy we had. And then you complete the policy as always. As for the assignment, Windows multi-session support is still kind of new in Intune, and many of you have asked me how I can push some of these policies out to my multi-session hosts, because you've created a group form and it just isn't working. Well, I found that if a specific group assignment doesn't work, I can assign to all devices, and that makes it work. But of course, you need to be really careful what policies you push to all devices, so just keep that in mind. Back on our cloud PC, we're now automatically signed in for OneDrive for Business, and you can tell that from the organization name. And if I go to my Documents folder, I've got 2 folders and 1 file. And if you look at my FSLogix profile documents, pinned over here on the left, it's the same thing, which is known folder redirection at work. So let's get something to print. So I'll print off my YouTube channel, print that to PDF, and save it to my regular Documents folder like I've trained my users to do for years. And if you look back at OneDrive, the file is right there syncing to the cloud. Now, if I pull up a command prompt here in the background, you'll see I'm signed into host AAD pooled-2. And if you look online at OneDrive, go to the documents, you see the files finished replicating. So then you can log off your cloud PC, and on my laptop, which is called AD host-1, I go to OneDrive and there's my test PDF, and I can do whatever I need to with it. And here's that secret weapon that I promised you. Marcel on the IT Pro Cloud blog has come out with a new script to clean up those OneDrive files to keep your profile sizes low. Now, once installed, it runs automatically in the background, or you can kick it off whenever you want, and it just has a few simple parameters. Now, I think the most important of which here is the allow megabytes on disk. That's how much OneDrive space can take up on your local system. And if you download more than that number, the script will run periodically in the background and help to reduce that size and tear those things back off to the cloud. So there you go, Alexander. I'd suggest OneDrive with the sync agent, node folder redirection, and all that other good stuff. Next, you should watch this video on keeping your FSLogix user profiles safe. And happy learning.